Chers tous, chères toutes, aujourd'hui c'est particulier. C'est la première fois que mes petits Français qui ne parlent pas anglais ne sauront pas où se trouver, où se placer. Je suis navré. Je dois avouer que c'est la première que je fais moi aussi de mon côté avec un invité pareil. Et puis, quelque part, je suis un peu stressé aussi parce que c'est la première fois que je fais une interview full en anglais. Alors, pour ceux qui parlent anglais, mettez des sous-titres si vous voulez. Les sous-titres automatiques feront peut-être le taf. Si c'est pas le cas, je vous invite à faire un tonnerre d'applaudissements chez vous. Ce sera en silence chez nous, mais ça ira très bien. Because today we are welcoming Christopher Carter. Hi, Christopher.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me be part of this. This is exciting.
Yeah, this is really exciting for me too. As we said just before the rec, this is my first time in English to do the interview, so this is a big stuff for me too. So thank you for accepting this. It's a pleasure, and because I followed your work for so many time now, and it's great that we can talk together today. Um, Maybe the name Christopher Carter do not ring a bell into someone's mind. And maybe you can introduce yourself first in the way you want, so we can have like a frame and we can go in the deep.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the reason that my name wouldn't ring a bell in some people's minds is because until fairly recently, within the last 4 years, I have kept out of most of the magic community. I'll go a little deeper into that why, but then four, maybe going on 5 years ago, I put out my first Penguin interview, and that's really what introduced me to the magic community. I have been a professional entertainer exclusively for going on 35 years and have performed primarily in the United States and primarily in the what was called the college campus or university campus market in the United States, which is something that only exists really in the United States. It's an enormous circuit of events that happen on college campuses. For I would say close to 20 years, I was the number one busiest college campus mentalist, magician, whatever, in the United States, doing close to 200 college campuses in an average year. That's more in my past now, but I started out as a close-up magician, created an effect that I published a long time ago in the Linking Ring magazine. I called it Cold Fusion, and it became the precursor to what eventually got sold as the Anniversary Waltz. So there's my little entry into the magic world. But I knew really quickly going into magic that I really preferred to be number one on stage. I was not primarily a close-up performer. And number two, I really gravitated toward mentalism. And so about 2 years into my professional magic career, I quit being magic altogether, went entirely into mentalism. And at that point, I dropped out of all magic fraternities. I was no longer a member of any magic clubs, quit going to magic conventions, and didn't even resurface in the magic world, like I said, until about 4 or 5 years ago. So, what I do now, I'm primarily a corporate entertainer and I do speaking. You can think of it as motivational speaker. Business speaking is what I call it. I talk about communication skills to salespeople, and I have a blast. I still get everywhere. I'm not primarily performing on college campuses anymore, but I still have one foot in them. I do probably 30 college campus performances in an average year. Um, and so that's who I am, and that's how I got here.
This is really fun because, of course, and as many people, I've discovered you with the penguins,
Mhm.
which I recommend you to buy because they are completely exceptional. There are some effects that are in my repertoire today, professional
Oh, great.
repertoire. Yeah, and it's a great fun to do them. We can talk about that just later. But there's something interesting in what you said. You stayed away from the magic community for the past years, and 4 years ago you came out with this Penguin Lab. Uh, why did you stay away from the magic community?
I'll tell you the primary reason is that when I was in the magic community, there was a push that wasn't necessarily intentional toward a kind of sameness. In if you go to a magic convention, it's always who's doing the latest this, who's doing the latest that. In my day, if you were a close-up magician, it was a pressure you've got to go into doing performing at trade shows. So there was this unintentional but nonetheless enforced conformity that came in that world, and I found it toxic to me and my development as a performer. I think it leads toward copycatism. I think it leads toward people adopting stock lines or even just doing a stock kind of thing. Now, having said that, I will say I think it's gotten considerably better in recent years, and I think that there is much more of an interest in an individual artistic expression. But when I was in it, if you went to a magic convention, you would see the same act, cards, billiard balls,
Over.
etc., over and over. And by the way, I was one of those same acts. I did the stage manipulation, and I wouldn't say that you got penalized for individual artistic expression, but there is still this kind of group think that came with it that I found was affecting me negatively. I realized I needed to find myself and who I am as a performer on stage through a lot of my own trial and error. Now, it didn't mean that I didn't associate with performers, but what I didn't associate with sort of institutional magic clubs and associations.
Mm.
And yeah, it wasn't good for me in my development, so I quit it.
Yeah, this is quite toxic, and personally, I find this is toxic today too at some points and in many ways. But there are some artistic expression, and as we said before, next week it will be Tobias Dostal, and Tobias Dostal is the perfect example of artistic expression through creativity, and not only to magic, but into performance, into exposition, into artwork.
Mhm.
And how do we find ourselves into magic? How do we find ourselves artistically? How did you do
Well,
that?
it starts by making a decision to no longer imitate. I mean, really, that is the decision. There is a book that I like quite a bit, and I'm trying to remember the title of it, but it's really a book called Out of Stock, and it is a book that advocates just getting rid of all stock lines from your repertoire. Now, understand, I'm a talking performer. I'm not a silent act. So what you say on stage is crucial. And I think it starts with that. It starts with then looking what other people in your market or your field are doing and saying, whatever I'm going to do, I'm not doing that. In other words, it starts with the choice of what not to do. After that, magic as a vehicle for personal expression could be really rich or could be very limited because we're in a business. I mean, I had to make a living with my act, so that affected what I was doing as a performer. But you have to start by analyzing who you are, what you want to share with the world, and finding ways to bring that out. Now, I don't want to overstate this. I am as much a craftsman in my performance, I think, as I am an artist, because my goal is a kind of entertainment. But I think if you see me on stage, you're going to go and say, this is a person with some distinctive point of view. Uh, I'm not trying to make any grand commentary around the world, but if you see my performance, you're going to have some idea going away of the things that I like, the things I don't like, the things I'm passionate about. So just looking for ways to bring that out into a performance is I think essential to the step to finding yourself as a performer. The
Mm.
other aspect of it, putting yourself in difficult performance situations. And I think that makes an enormous difference. I, for a period, performed in theaters. And what I liked about theaters was it gave you this huge latitude to express yourself. You could do things that were not commercial specifically within the context of a bigger performance. But what I discovered about it is that you had a very non-challenging audience. I mean, they were there to be taken for a ride. Well, how do you work in an audience that is not necessarily there for you, that you have to win over? And I think by tackling that challenge, you also go a long way toward discovering yourself as a performer, because you're only going to succeed with things that are exciting to you. If they're not exciting to you, they're not going to be exciting to your audience.
Mm. And actually, the trick that you do are exciting to do because, as I said, twice of them are in my repertoire.
Oh, good.
The first one is, I believe you called him Phone Ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do it a lot. And actually,
Oh,
actually I do it next month. I do it. Yeah, I have a gig next month, and I'll do it. And the second one is the act with the three billets
uh-huh.
where the spectator have to write their crush names on it.
Mm-hmm.
I do that a lot, a lot, a lot. This is really practical. This is easy to do. The manipulation is not so
Right.
hard.
No, it's manipulation is not particularly difficult in it.
No, no. You have some tempo, you have some timing to do it, but it's okay. You do it a few times and it's okay. And the act is absolutely great. The audience is completely astonished when they see them. So those are your creations. And today, when you do some performance in corporate or, do you do only your tricks, or do you do some trick that you find somewhere from someone else, or do you only do your stuff?
For the most part, with one exception, I only do my stuff. Now, my stuff, I'm a classicist. I'm interested in the classics of mentalism, so I don't want to create the impression that the things I present are, some incredible, bold new innovation. From time to time, I have created a few new plots, and I think ringtone, for example, which you were just discussing, is one of those. That is more happenstance than intentional. But I will not do anything on stage that I haven't tried to completely rework to have my own personal stamp on it. If I haven't brought something to the particular effect or routine that I feel is unique or distinctive, I have no interest at all in doing it, which I will say is a big part of my problem with electronic mentalism. Uh, I think it's more difficult to do that with electronic mentalism. And the main reason that I don't do it is that it's not so much that electronics are unreliable on stage. Some of them are fine, but because I feel cheapened a lot of times while doing it. I feel like it makes me lazy.
Oh,
And
all right. Okay.
yeah, and I don't want to be lazy on stage. I want to bring my own thoughts and ideas to it. That sounds crazy for a mentalist, because in mentalism, the effect is supposed to be the only thing that counts. But honestly, if I can't bring some of my own cleverness to bear
Mm.
in a routine, I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, but I think that the revelation is the thing in the mentalism, and in the magic too. The revelation is
Mhm.
the thing, but you have to be comfortable with it. You have to manage it in your own way. And if to get this sensation, to manage it in your own way, you have to readapt the method, maybe this is the better situation you can get in.
Well, it's good to have the situation be that, so many incredible, clever thinkers have come before that we can build on that as opposed to reinventing anything from scratch.
Yeah.
I think I might have lost a little bit of the track of your question, but just to kind of get back to this issue of self-expression, I think most of us who are professional entertainers who fully make our living from that could probably have gone in some other direction. We could have had what I like to call a real job. There's a reason we didn't do that. And the reason is that we find the idea boring, intolerable. We want to be ourselves. And why, if that's the urge, why, if that's the driving motivation to become a professional entertainer, would we then decide, nah, we're just going to do what everybody else does? It just seems to me nonsensical to me.
Yeah, I get it. And today, the act that you have for the corporate, is it always the same that you do for each company, or do you adapt it?
I adapt it. Yes, I pretty much will always create one routine that is specific to that corporate message,
Hmm.
whatever. And again, I'm not adapting crazily. I have a set of effects that I know can easily be adapted to a corporate message. But for the most part, it's the same. I mean, I have what I would call an A show and a B show, so that if somebody has me back, they're going to see all different material. But the A show is always the same A show. The B show is always the same B show. Now, when I'm presenting in a corporate environment as an entertainer, I'm either an after dinner entertainer at some big corporate banquet, or I am presenting to essentially pitch a client's product during a sales presentation. I recently did one for a company that makes giant video displays. And so, their mission for me was, can you carry forward a little bit of our message, but still be entertaining? So I do most of my main show, and then I build one routine around the video display. It's pretty simple. But the other thing that I do as a speaker, very little mentalism goes into that. That's really mostly message and content related to listening skills and presentation skills.
Mm.
So in that routine, in that program, I pretty much will only do one effect, and I will either do the tossed out deck or I will do the 3 billet routine. After
Mm.
that, there's no more mentalism in that one.
Yeah, you have like just a little stuff because your toss out deck is really clever. This is great. This is the one that you presented in your Penguin, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is great, and the 3 billet performance. So you just travel when you do them, the speaker stuff. You just do one trick, and
Mhm.
this is like almost propless, right? Is this?
It is almost propless, yes.
Yeah, and even though the 3 billet routine, you can do it actually with the stuff that you found on the gigs directly. You can find
Yeah,
free
oh,
papers.
absolutely. And I do that all the time. I'll just pick up a set of business cards at the hotel desk and use those in the program.
So how did you created those two acts? Because you said you had an A act and a B act. So what is the creation process? Where do you start to do them? To
The
create.
A Act was created primarily during my college campus years,
Okay.
and it was built for a really specific kind of performance that turns out to be so challenging that I feel like you can apply the lessons from it everywhere. So I'll get to that in just a second. The B Act was putting it together was brutal because first of all, it had to be mentalism that didn't look or feel like what was in the A Act. And that's when you start to realize that most mentalism kind of looks and feels the same. So it was really difficult. Basically, I just searched around for core ideas that I liked and began to work out my own versions of them and then introduce them one at a time into the A Act. At first, they felt awful. They just felt terrible to perform because all the rhythm was off. And then, slowly they worked their way into something that I could actually piece them together into a longer set and finally separate them out into their own. But let me talk about the A Act, because the A Act is my core college campus material. I use this not only for corporate events, but also on cruise ships because you can go anywhere with it. So a little bit of background about the college campus market in the United States. Uh, it's booked by student activities committees who are they're run by a faculty advisor, but for the most part, it's the students themselves who are arranging regular programming to bring into their campus.
Okay.
Where they will have the programming can vary a lot. Sometimes they have these beautiful theaters, performing arts centers. Sometimes they will put you in a gymnasium. Sometimes it will be in a kind of like a ballroom type space in a student union. It varies a lot. But a 4-year university where people are residents there, they'll have you come in and perform at the nighttime. We also have technical colleges and community colleges that are 2-year programs, and they're primarily commuters. That nobody lives on campus. Because of that, they're not having anybody come in the evening. You come in the daytime, and where you will end up performing is a cafeteria where there will be a lot of students who had no idea you were going to be there. They're just sitting there eating lunch. And there'll be a stage set off to the side somewhere, and you'll get introduced by somebody, but then you have to come up and take control of a room of a group of people who didn't know you were going to be there and largely have no interest in you being there.
Yeah, this is hard.
So It's like street performing, but maybe a little bit better than street performing, a little bit easier. Pays a lot better, I'll give it that. And but it is a challenge because sometimes these rooms are just not amenable to having a performer. The focus isn't necessarily front and center. So you have to come in and take control, take that focus,
Mm.
insist that people watch you long enough to get invested in the show. So that is where I developed my core material.
Okay.
And what's nice about that core material is that I know it's bulletproof. It will work anywhere. It's also surroundable. It's also portable. And so I've used that stuff in every imaginable circumstance. It always works.
Did you said that you played in cafeteria where those people didn't know that you were about to show them some magic and they didn't know you. This is hard stuff. Do you have some advice for those magicians out there who are listening to us uh, to get the attention even when it's that hard?
Yes, I do. I think the first thing is to look at what street performers do to draw in an audience
Mm.
where they will interest a handful of people, and it's those people that interest the audience that's walking by. So think of it as a series of ever enlarging circles. The first circle is you and a handful of people. And then the second circle is those people walking by. And then the third circle is probably even those people who see that big group.
Mm.
So you have to begin to think about structuring your show such that you interest a handful of people enough that they become part of the show.
Yeah.
And then other people get drawn in. And on top of that, other people get drawn in. So that's what I did. I structured my tossed out deck so that it starts with me just working with one person who I don't even bring up on stage. I deliberately bring them to the side of the stage because they're a representative of the audience and I want them to stay in the audience.
Mm.
And then people start to see that. And so I now move from working with that one person to the tossed out portion of the tossed out deck by involving a handful of people. And suddenly we've got a big group of people involved. So it's a progress. Many people will do a tossed out deck routine and it will last maybe 3 minutes. Toss, toss, toss. This is your card. This is your card. But
Yeah.
mine takes closer to 7 minutes because there's lots of magic along the way, little revelations that are happening step by step. The purpose of that routine was to get a group of uninterested observers to sit up and take notice. And then from there, in a college cafeteria environment, I move immediately to the blindfold question and answer act, which when I first suggested that to people, they thought I was crazy because that's something that should be the finish. But again, it has a natural progression of
Mm.
working with a couple of people on stage and then involving people in the audience and then involving everybody in the audience. So I think that looking at the way that street performers structure a routine is really helpful. The other thing that I think is really helpful is to just go in with the attitude that your performance space isn't merely the stage, it's the entire room. And that everything in that room is your stage. So to give you an
Ah.
example, if I had a group of people who were up and chatting, they're distracted, they're creating a chatting distraction. I will actually, in the middle of a show, just go to them and say, "Hey, would you just do me a favor? Would you stand up?" They don't know why I'm having them stand up, but just stand up right now. Great. And so I will get them to stand up. Good. Now I want you just to come and move and sit in this table. I will literally move people around the room
You
if
are
I have
punishing
to.
them.
Yeah. What I'm doing is saying, you're not in charge of the space. I'm in charge of the space. I'll
Yeah.
just arbitrarily go, here's where you go. So don't be shy. And that's not an easy thing to do. Initially, I was pretty shy about this kind of thing, but I also realized it's largely an issue of survival.
Mm.
If you want to get the respect of a room, you have to stand up and demand it. You don't demand it in a rude or obnoxious way. You demand it by controlling it, by saying, here, I'm going to work with you and I'm going to work with you. And, why don't you move in here? And hey, let's make room for these people coming in. Again, watch a street performer do this. This is how they will do it. They'll start and then they'll begin to invite the people who are going around. It's a process of inclusion, but it's also a very assertive process.
And you know, you've said that this act, you've done it so many times for so many years. How do you not get bored by it?
Well, that's one of the reasons I ended up becoming a speaker because I really was starting to get bored with it. And it's one of the reasons I started to pull back ultimately from the college campus market because it was just starting to feel like repetition. But uh, I mean, any performer who is in a show that's the same basic show day in and day out has to wrestle with that.
Yeah.
I have a number of friends who are Las Vegas performers, and they're doing what 6 nights a week. And this question doesn't just apply to me. Of course, it applies to them.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is that you get to a point where doing the tricks or doing the show is no longer the point. The point is playing the audience, using this material as a vehicle to
Mm.
engage people in the audience. And that, I think, once you get to that point, it's a lot easier to keep things fresh. Sometimes it's a challenge, don't get me wrong, but it's easier because you always have a different audience every night.
Yeah.
They're never the same, and their responses are going to be different. So if you learn to live in that space of your interaction with the audience members, it's going to stay fresh and it's going to be something that you can enjoy and look forward to almost every night.
Because I'm a professional magician and mentalist too. I do stage stuff too. I do close-up stuff too, speaker. And I do that for the past 10 years. So not as long as you, but 10
But
years is
the challenge. Yeah.
yeah, 10 years is okay. And I've observed this in my own repertoire and in my own way into magic, that every 2 or 3 years, I get totally bored by my stuff. And I had to change everything. And this process of change take like 6 months to 1 year to do, to have a new solid repertoire with, 5, 10 tricks that goes hard and works every time in any condition, surrounding, this is a big stuff to, and even to keep connected with the passion to do that, your own passion
Right.
with magic. This is a strange work to do.
Well, I think the process you describe is probably the right process. I mean, you do have to keep it fresh for yourself. I would always reserve space in my show for something new. So it would be core material and an opportunity to work on something because you have to continually be working on something.
Yeah.
And eventually that thing that, I continued to work on will get good enough that it would become part of the core material. So it's not that there was no evolution to the act, but certain core pieces stayed. And I think that the reason that they have stayed is because they are the kinds of pieces that are all about improvisation and interaction. That is the reason that I love the question and answer act so much, because it is improvisational. At least the way I do it, it's mostly improv. So keeps me fresh. I enjoy it.
This is a way to see this thing that I've never think about before. To not change the stuff that you are doing, but change the interaction and with the public, I mean, yeah.
Mhm.
And stay tuned with the crowd always, and to react, to interact, to change stuff in the crowd. This is a really good way to see it. At the beginning of this interview, you've said that before, magic community was a little bit toxic about who's doing this the best, all of this. And it's a little bit better today, according to you. This is what you
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And the digital stuff come into magic really strongly, right? Magic with the phones, with the iPads, with the even your clients do magic with the screens,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Do you have some digital stuff into your performances, or
Uh,
you stay
I
out of it?
I do for certain audiences. I always, when still for many, many years when performing for college students, I will always include something that revolves around their phones because I come from a pre-smartphone generation, so I'm not as invested in the smartphone as the younger generations are. Your generation going on down, you live on your phones. Well, for business purposes, I do too. I think everybody has to now.
Yeah.
But I would say that the young generation that goes to university now mediates almost the entire world through their phone.
Mm.
And it becomes their filter. So you have to do something that involves the phone because it's really their home. It's their base of personal operation.
Yeah.
So one of the routines you mentioned that you do, one of my routines that I call ringtone, I've always done that. There is one commercially available routine that I do. And the reason I do it is because it just absolutely destroys a college campus audience, and that is Toxic Plus, with the you would call it the remainder force, where you turn the phone down. I love that thing. I mean, love that thing, and the reason I love that thing is because it's this perfect in magic and perfect in mentalism. It involves every single person in the crowd, so that when you get to the payoff, they've all been doing what it is you need to do to get to that revelation. It's great for gigantic audiences. I get to a few audiences every year that are very large, between 3,000 and 5,000, occasionally a little bit more. Not many, but a few. And it is really hard to create a show that connects with an audience that size. And that's my I'm not intending to pitch a commercial product, but once I discovered that, I don't think I will ever do a show for that size crowd without doing that effect.
Okay. Yeah, but actually, we can promote your stuff today. Actually, to do that a little bit, I've spent all the afternoon with you on the internet. I've rewatched your two penguins because you've done two penguins, right? Is that? Yeah. I've I got it for I think I got your first penguin live 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. And there's a lot of crazy stuff in there. I think about the broom stuff. Just okay, we can do that. Yeah, it just works. Okay. How do you get those ideas? I don't know. This is in your mind. But there's a lot of things on your website. Motivational speaker. When you do some motivational speaker stuff, do you do magic? Or is that only talking?
Right. I always do some magic in a speech, always. And the reason for that is that if you want to get up on stage and be paid to give advice to people in business, you have to have some core of credibility. And all of the advice I'm giving is about interpersonal presentation skills. And so it comes from an academic background that I have, but it really comes from being a performer. My pitch is that, number one, I'm going to be a lot more fun than most other speakers that they have. So that's where the magic comes in. And number two, that they're going to get very useful tools that they can apply. And a lot of times when talking about metaphors that are useful for business people, very often speakers will gravitate towards sports because sports is obviously team oriented, and the skills you use to build a team in the world of sports apply in the world of business as well. But I think that performance is a really brilliant area from which to derive lessons to the world of business, because it also involves teams and collaboration, and it involves communication skills and self-presentation skills that everybody is going to have to use throughout their career. So I go on stage, what gives me credibility? I can't say that I ran a company of 1,000 employees or 100,000 employees. I can't say that I was the top grossing salesperson for such and such a company, but what I can say is I know a lot about connecting with people. And here's my proof. and then we go into the program. So I always do magic in a motivational program.
So you think that because mentalism is playing with the perception, playing with, all of that stuff that come into our minds, do you think that playing with those perception brings you to a closer understanding of human being?
Yeah, I do. I do think that. Um, it's not just mentalism. I studied stage hypnotism for a really long time, and I don't
Okay.
think anything has changed my understanding of human nature and the way that I interact with other people more than stage hypnosis. And I'm going to qualify that by saying that what I learned from stage hypnosis is that I don't believe that most of the stage hypnosis phenomena is related to a trance state in kind of the way that people classically understand hypnosis.
Hmm.
I believe it is mostly a phenomenon of social psychology. It mostly has to do with using human motivation to get people to do what you want them to do, get them to comply. And when I began to explore that, it radically shaped the way I do my mentalism as well, because I'm doing a question answer act. And I discovered that there's a set of tools for me to get people to agree with something I say about them that isn't necessarily true. Now, the audience doesn't know. To the audience, I've just revealed something about them. But what I've gotten them to do is just agree that what I've said
Hmm.
about them is true. Not necessarily true at all. Once you discover that you can harness people's motivations to be stars, to be on stage, to want to please an authority figure on stage, you can really, really radically transform the way that you work with people on stage.
Hmm.
Uh, but it also works in other human interactions. Knowing that how people are motivated is a great way to build connection. It's a great it provides you with a set of tools to build trust with other people.
Uh, you stopped doing those hypnosis show, right? Or do you still
Sorry,
do?
ask again.
Did you stop to do those hypnosis show? You said that
I
you.
started out for 3 years of my career fairly early on. I
Mm,
performed just a stage hypnosis show for outdoor fairs and festivals.
mm,
Uh, and it was middle of summer. Sometimes I would do 3 shows a day, sometimes just two. For let's say that I went to a fair for a week, and so I would do 14 shows or more over the course of the week. Um, I learned a lot from it. The first season, I had a lot of fun, but that was a situation where I was getting incredibly bored.
okay.
Once you realize that you can get people to act like idiots on stage, it's not exciting anymore. It's not interesting.
Yeah, but this is also maybe we need to rethink about it, People does not have to look like stupid shit on stage, They can
Well,
be.
I'm using that concept a little facetiously because I never had them do anything that they wouldn't live down. I didn't demean or belittle them. But the appeal of a stage hypnotist is to the audience is to have an opportunity for their friends to go up on stage and act
Yeah.
crazy, to seem to do things that they wouldn't do in every other part of their life. Once
Mm,
you realize how easy it is to set that in motion, it's not that exciting anymore.
yeah.
It really has a strong feeling of sameness. And I was just searching for a richer kind of interaction, which I found in mentalism.
Yeah. And in mentalism, there is a big, big, big debate on the advertisement that we can make with the crowd, when they think that you have real superpower, when they think that you can actually read their mind and I don't know, contact with the deaf people that have in their
Well,
past.
yeah, that's an entirely different thing, I think, than even having them think that you can actually read their mind.
Yeah, but for them, you know, they do not do the difference between. Actually, they often do. They correlate. I don't know if we can say they attach together hypnosis and mentalism. They cannot
Oh
make
yeah.
They cannot make the difference.
No, that you're absolutely right about that. I think my gut instinct there is to say good. For one thing, everyone who performs mentalism is going to have a different take. And I have good friends who really come out and say, yes, I'm psychic. Yes, I can read your mind.
Mm,
Yes, I can see the future. That I sort of wore that as a set of clothes for a while, played with it, but it did not fit me at all. So as an onstage person, as a persona on stage, I don't really adopt that, but I do want my audience to go away thinking either, yes, he really can read your mind, or, I don't think I believe in this mind reading stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. In other words, I do want to plant that seed of doubt. So I set myself on stage to treating the effect, the
mm,
mentalism, as if it is real. I don't come out and say I'm real. In fact, I pretty much explicitly say that I'm not.
mm,
Uh, I come out and I say, look, I'm not interested in making you believe or not believe. I'm here to mess with your minds. And having said that, I now act as if everything that we do is real.
mm,
And I found that I like that approach because it gives the audience an opportunity to decide what they want it to be.
mm,
So if somebody is inclined to be skeptical or even be offended by the idea that somebody claims to read their mind, they're going to go away from my show realizing that I'm not insisting that they believe in anything. If
mm,
somebody is inclined to believe, they're going to come away from my show thinking, well, maybe he's given me permission to actually believe in this. But I don't take a hard stance. I have no interest in trying to push the idea that I'm a literal mind reader. And if somebody comes up to me after a show and they say, "Is this real?" I'll say, "No, it's an
mm,
illusion. It's a set of illusions," because I am just not the sort of person who can live that character everywhere else. I can't do it. And again, it goes back to discovering who you are and what you value. And I value the experience
mm,
of that moment of doubt. That's what I really value. I love the idea that people can have this really strong certainty about how the world works and then be cudgeled into the realization that, gosh, maybe they don't actually understand how the world works.
mm.
But I don't want to tell them, no, what I'm giving you is reality. I have no interest in that.
No, I'm thinking right now about Darren Brown and his show called Infamous. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen that particular one, no.
Okay, so if you want, he's on YouTube, and he's talking about something in at the end of a show of Infamous, because all the second part of the show is about contact with deaf people, and you have
Mhm.
some crowd member on stage, and contacting deaf, and during this act, he makes some rupture, and he stops and he says, "Okay, this is bullshit. I am not really doing it." And he come back to the stuff and really reading the minds and all of that stuff. And even if he said that, at the end of the show, a lady one night came to him and says, "Okay, can you put me in contact with my grandma?"
Yeah.
And Darren Brown said, "Okay, I was thinking that I was clear on stage. I just cannot do that." And the ladies goes back and say, "Okay, but can you put me in contact with my grandma?" And they are just keeping this perception that you have superpower. This is a tricky
Right.
thing. This is
It's a tricky thing. I think if you're going to perform as a magician or as a mentalist, you have to accept that that will happen. And I understand that there are a lot of people who are more in the magic world and mentalism world who insist that no, you have to work against that all the time. You have to pause constantly and go, not real, not real, not
mm,
real. Um, to my mind, there's a kind of a situation which I would call like you've given them fair warning. You know, after that, I don't think that we have to be that
Yeah,
invested in their own personal choices. I don't mean that we shouldn't be completely uninvested,
yeah,
especially when it comes to the idea of talking to the dead. You know, I said earlier, to me, that's just even a step farther than
yeah.
saying I can read your mind. Um, I say I can read your mind. It's not like there are a bunch of street corner mind readers ready to prey on their belief that their mind can be read. But
Mm,
there are certainly street corner frauds who are happy to prey on their ability that they can talk to their dead relatives.
mm.
So I'm not saying that I have absolutely no responsibility, but I don't think you need to spend your entire time performing on stage constantly undercutting your plausibility
Yeah,
for what you do.
yeah.
Um,
You are giving them the tools to understand, and then you do what you want with those tools.
when I first started to become a stage performer, I tried to become a more traditional type of stage magician, and I gravitated toward comedy magic because it was popular at the time, and I was not good at it. So I'm glad I left it. But one of the things I noticed about comedy magic a lot of the time is that the basic premise of the comedy isn't uh, some joke that has substance. The real premise of the comedy is, gee, isn't magic stupid? And I hated that. I hate when magicians treat the tricks that they do as if they're childish or stupid. And so I think, to me, mentalism is just taking this as far as you can.
Yeah.
As a mentalist, you can be comical. Absolutely. You can be funny, but you cannot make fun of the premise of what you're doing. You have to treat it like it's real, or to my mind, it's not mentalism.
Hmm. Oh, so this is not even mentalism in your mind. Okay, this is interesting because you think that when you do mentalism, you have to be like kind with the people in front of you, or
I'm sorry, ask that again.
yeah, I was just saying because you just said that if they are not, you know, I'm not going able to do it in English in my mind right now. It's okay.
Okay.
It's
Well,
okay.
let me try to delve into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
I think if you do mentalism,
yeah,
and let's say I'm going to read your mind, and you pull out a little egg beater and aim it at somebody, you're
yeah.
saying, "Gee, isn't this stupid?" But I think if you say, "I really need you to concentrate in the right way," it's really important that you actually hear your inner voice articulate this.
Hmm.
One is making fun of the process. The other is treating the process if it's real. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah,
that as a mentalist, I don't think it's mentalism when you make fun
yeah,
of the process of mind reading.
yeah.
Now, uh, very possibly Darren Brown would disagree with me. And if that's the case, who am I to argue? I mean, my God, look at the guy. Uh, Greatest mentalist of all time. But uh, that is where I stand on it.
Yeah, but I get it. If it just works for you, if this is what your experience is saying about what you have to do, 25 years is enough to have a statement on something. I think, yeah,
At minimum, it's what makes it fun and exciting for me.
yeah, I get it. Um, Now this is the most philosophical question on all of those interviews. I think this is the kind of question I can ask you this question twice, and you will give me two different response on it. This is great.
Okay, that's probably most questions that you asked me, actually.
Yeah. Why do you do magic? Why magic?
You're right. That is a deep question because it has so many facets to it.
Yeah.
I think I do magic because I love the gratification that I get when I get people to shriek or respond with absolute astonishment. It is an incredible feeling to be able to create that. It might mean that I have a weak and fragile ego. If it does mean that, it's probably right. I think I was a nerdy outcast as a kid, and it gave me a sense of power and accomplishment to discover that I could do things that people got excited by. So, yeah, I feed on that. I think I also do magic because I find it a great avenue for me to be my own boss. I mean, there's a not,
Mm.
I don't want to say that as a business aspect. I studied theater, and in theater, you have great opportunities for self-expression, but you're still part of this grand team. And so you're having to contend with a director's vision, other actors' vision. So I like being a solo performer on stage because I get to set the vast majority of the rules that I follow on stage. So that's a big part of my motivation. At this stage in my life, I think I like magic as a business because I probably have precious few other marketable skills and couldn't get any other kind of job. So those are three areas. One's business, one's personal, one's artistic. I like being able to make my own artistic choices. Absolutely love it. I like being in business for myself. I absolutely love it. But more than anything, I like leading an audience or even an individual down the garden path and subverting their expectations to the point where they scream, shout, bang their head in absolute astonishment.
Mm.
Comedians love getting laughs. I like getting people to go nuts and freak out.
Just so we know, because I don't know anyone who is working harder than you, because we are friends on Facebook, and I see all the times, okay, I'm there. Okay, no, I'm there. Okay, no, I'm here. And no, I'm here. And no, I'm here. And how many gigs do you do approximately in 1 year?
Far fewer than I used to, thank goodness. The last several years have been a concentrated effort to do fewer gigs and make more money, and it's mostly worked out. There is not where I want it to be, but it's a lot closer. So I think that the question isn't how many gigs I do. The question is really how many places I'm at.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah, and because I mean, again, let's use a Las Vegas performer as an example. They're doing an astronomically large number of gigs, but they get to stay in one place. I wouldn't do as many gigs as them, but I would be in a lot of different spaces. So at my peak, I was in roughly 200 different cities in an average year. Um, Not always on separate days. Sometimes I would do two different cities in a single day, where I would perform at one college campus at noon and one college campus in the evening. So my life was entirely a blur of just driving, sometimes flying and getting a rental car. Now I do probably about 120 gigs a year. So it's not an astronomical number anymore. I'm really
Mm,
been trying to get it down to 80. And that
but
is my goal.
this is more expensive now, right? This is why,
Yes.
yeah, and this is why. And when 200 states in a year, this is completely insane. How did
Well,
you
it was, and I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, how did you
I
manage
really wouldn't.
your
Uh, Years of my life are literally a blur, and it took a giant toll on my personal and mental health. It definitely took a toll on my relationships. So, I would not call it a healthy lifestyle by any stretch of the imagination. And yet, I don't think I would trade it. I mean,
Hmm.
there's lots of things that we can look back on our life and go, well, that probably wasn't the best way to do it. But I don't know that I could have done it any other way. Once the opportunity availed itself to me, I ran with it. I mean, when you start out performing and you're not working at all, and then suddenly you have people who will hire you constantly, you're so thrilled that you now have a career in this that you just take it. And after a while, it becomes comfortable. And after a while, that comfort gets to the point where it holds you back both personally and artistically. And I did let it get that far, but I have very consciously shifted my life away from that, and I'm doing fewer gigs, more money, and headed in that direction, I hope, still.
This is great. Here, right now, I am in Strasbourg. So this is in the east of France.
Mhm.
Um, the month of December is like the half of my growth income in the year.
Uh-huh.
This is the big month because
Right.
we have
Yeah.
we have the Christmas market, who
Hmm.
is known worldwide, and we have like 3 million people coming from all over the world in
Hmm.
Strasbourg to see the Christmas market. And I do something like 1 or 2 gigs per day in
Hmm.
December. And always in January, I'm sick.
Yes,
And
I
I
know that
just think
feeling.
about you, who do for an entire year. You are in 200 different places and you just continue. It's okay.
Yeah, that's largely true. I mean, in those days, if I got sick, I just kept going.
Yeah.
Now that we've experienced COVID, I think that nobody would even let you do that now. But I mean, I remember, going to do gigs with 101-degree Fahrenheit fever, 102-degree Fahrenheit fever.
Mm.
That wasn't common. I mean, I didn't get sick all the time or anything, but I did in those days take the summer months off. So I would finish up about mid-May and start in again about mid-August. So I would have almost 3 months in which I wasn't doing anything.
Mm.
And I learned to really love summer.
But we are already almost at the end of the interview, but you just talked about COVID, and I'm curious because you are a magician, but you are a businessman. And COVID is a big stuff in business
Absolutely.
when
Boy.
we are doing presential stuff. How did you
Hmm.
manage it?
Uh, not as well as some, but I think pretty well. So the first 2 weeks of March of 2020, I think we will all pretty well remember. Here we are with careers and bookings, and then within 2 weeks, they are gone. Every country had different types of lockdown
Yeah.
procedures. In the United States, every state had different types of lockdown procedures, but the business was gone. Um, Within about a week, I had gotten a call from my college agent who said, "Can you do these shows virtually? Because we think that's what's coming." And I said, "Sure," with absolutely no idea how I would do it.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. But with the help of my stepson, who, in addition to being a computer programmer, is an avid gamer and knew a lot about live streaming, managed to set up a studio downstairs in my lower level. Now, as it happens, my wife is also a performer entertainer, and she presents for primarily for libraries, smaller level gigs than I do, but more of them. And her audience had an enormous demand for virtual. So I performed quite a lot virtually for college campuses. And then I also produced and ran the tech for her virtual programs for libraries. And between those two, we managed to keep afloat and not have to dip into any savings.
Mm.
Or where things really turned around is when I realized that there were a number of businesses that had a need to learn communication skills for communicating on screen and also communicating interpersonally with a face mask on, because it has dramatic impact on how we communicate. So I developed a program for hospital staff who have to communicate through masks. How do you build connection, trust, and rapport while wearing a face mask? Also developed it for telemedicine. And so these were more serious programs.
Yeah.
And that was the main way I got through COVID.
And now, those virtual shows, do you have still some demands to do them, or do you
I
only
don't
do?
know. I don't do them anymore. I will do virtual speaking, but I won't do virtual mentalism shows. I don't like them.
Mm.
I never got to the point where I really liked them. By the time I got to when I thought I was doing them pretty well, the market had dropped out. I remember the very last show going, I think I really got the hang of this. There were very few gigs. I think still in like doing business team building, I think there's definitely an opportunity to do some virtual mentalism shows. But I just have no interest in doing that. I like live performance. I don't like working that way on camera. So I have no interest in doing it anymore.
So no, we are at the end. Alors,
Oh,
I have some questions,
yeah.
some short questions that suggest some short answers. The first one is, we have this young generation of magicians who are coming. They are, for a lot of them, really talented, For a lot of them, they are just practicing in their room and it's okay. But
Mhm.
today, mm, uh, who impresses you in the current generation? You know?
Well, you have to understand that just about to be 59 years old. My idea of the current generation might be a little bit different from yours.
Yeah.
Who impresses me among performers younger than me? Number one, Colin Cloud. I think he's the best mentalist in the world. Um,
Yeah.
uh, obviously Darren Brown, but so to me, even though he's in his 30s, to me, he's a new generation. Among the real like fresh faces, I just don't know enough of them.
Okay.
Uh, it's not a world that I know about. But if you say to me, who is younger than you that really excites you, indisputably Colin Cloud, David Gerard. I don't know if you know David's work, but I think he's just wonderful. These are young guys in their 30s who are doing work that I'm excited by, a little envious of their talent and their drive, but I'm more excited by it.
Mm. Do you have some advices for the new generation, for the person who want to start magic business?
Yeah. Magic is not about practicing tricks. It's about performing for an audience. Do every single thing you can to translate the tricks you've been practicing into a performance and get in front of as many people as you possibly can. It's the only way you're going to grow and get any good.
Mm. Okay. And for the last one, I try to continue this series of interviews. I'm trying to have some more guests on it. And you're the first one in English, I think, that I did pretty well. I try to, at least.
You did a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you so much. Um, can you put me in touch with someone who could be great on this format?
Yeah, I just named one, David Gerard.
Oh, that would be great. That would be actually great if you can send him a message for me, and then I reach him from I don't know where, but we'll see. And maybe he'll come into this format. Yeah, it will be great. Right, Christopher? If you have any last words to conclude this interview, this is the moment. And if you have not, I'm going to conclude it myself.
Well, yeah, my last word is just a word of thank you for including me in your interview series. And thank you. I'm really flattered that I get to be the first English language one. It's been a thrill.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Pour les quelques personnes qui ont suivi cette interview, I'm going to conclude in English because I've done it all in English, so I'm not going to go in French back. So for all of the person that listening to this channel is only about talking about magic. You are not going to see some explanation tricks, but if you are really passionate about magic, if you really want to see some of the perception of the professionals and actually of some of the biggest professional in the profession, this is here. You can subscribe. You can leave a comment. When the video will be out, Christopher can reach in the comments and respond to all of your questions if you have some. And us, I see you next week with Tobias Dostal, and I think it will be great. Actually, I don't know, I turn it, I rake it, yeah, I rake it, yeah, I tomorrow. So this will be great. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Thank you.
I know it's 10 a.m. It's 11 a.m. in Chicago, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's 6 p.m. there. So I'm going to eat and have a good day and have a good gigs for the next one that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.